Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Today we're going to be talking about Orbital, Samantha Harvey's 2024 novel about the International Space Station. This novel is coincidentally relevant. I was planning to read it anyway, but a little while back, very recently, astronauts went behind the moon, on the dark side of the moon, the part of the moon that no human has ever seen before or travelled to. And this novel is about four astronauts and two cosmonauts on the International Space Station on a day when other people travel to the moon. Apparently, in 24 hours, the International Space Station orbits the Earth 16 times, and in the front of the book, you have this illustration of roughly how this works, which part of the planet the space station is over at any given time in the course of these orbital rotations. And the book is structured around these. So it's not actually 16 chapters because they have like orbit 8 ascending and orbit 8 descending, for example. But it's structured around these 16 cycles around the Earth, and it explains quite early in the book how the astronauts and cosmonauts are forced to follow digital time on their clock very closely because day and night have no real meaning up there. They see the sun rise and set, they see the Earth go through days and nights many times in the course of a day. Another coincidence to do with Orbital is that recently I uploaded a video talking about the prevalence of dystopian fiction and literature and media and pessimism in media and literature, and asking a question about whether there were appropriate utopian responses to the terrible state of the world and the environment also. And this book is perhaps the closest to a utopian vision that I've read for some time, even though it's based within the world as it now exists. And I say this because the astronauts in the book and the cosmonauts are individuals from different nations, and you get to know them to a certain degree. But the book is really about the collective. It's about these people from different nations, different backgrounds, collaborating in something that is purely an expression of human curiosity, ingenuity, scientific exploration, and the capacity to dream. And the book weaves in dreams and daydreams and art as well. One of the astronauts has a postcard of a Velasquez painting, which is used both as a kind of metaphor for perspective and the way that perspective shifts when you're outside of the confines of the Earth and up in the sky above the atmosphere, but also it's about the relationship to his wife, and it's also about human endeavor, human brilliance. I think Orbital really treads this interesting line between the fundamental irrational terror and horror and insanity of shooting people up above the atmosphere to fall continually in orbit around the Earth, and the precarious nature of being inside a metal object full of oxygen surrounded by a vacuum, and also the kind of beauty, poetry, and sublime awe that this inspires. Seeing tornadoes from great distance, seeing the Earth as a mother, as a home, as an environment. So it's cut through with a sort of humanistic, but also beyond humanistic kind of love and inspiration connected just to the sheer random improbability of being on a planet that can sustain life. It talks about geological time, about cosmic time, about the possibility of the Earth, just shifting off its axis and the enormous ramifications this could have. The precarious nature of floating in space where cosmic debris could destroy us at any moment. It's really a sort of homage to the very existence of life. Orbital is written in this kind of poetic prose style that anyone who's done a creative writing course will recognize as something that people who kind of study writing often aspire to. And it's a style that kind of irritates me a little because it's a very, it's a genre. And often it's a genre that compensates for lack of content. So at the beginning of this book, when Harvey was really styling in every sentence, I was a little apprehensive. But as the book went on and she used this stylistic flair to explore existence within the cosmos, to explore the length of human life, bereavement, connection, dream, exploration, I realized that it was a perfect form. She's using her style to serve the purpose of the novel and to create a kind of series of poetic fragments that tell a story of a day, almost in the way that Virginia Woolf might have done. I won't say much more about it in case you haven't read it and you would like to, but I will say a few of my favourite moments. One is a description of space exploration as something that the human race needs to go through in the way that a person goes through puberty. You know, as a child, you think that you are the center of the universe. Then you begin to realize that there are others out there. And then humans went through a phase where they were sending out probes and they were listening to radio waves and they were trying to get out into space, and they thought the closest living creatures are probably on Mars, but then slowly realizing that we can't seem to identify anything that looks like life, and then ultimately getting to a point of maturity where we start looking back to Earth to try to communicate with one another. And I think that arc and the way she describes it was very optimistic and beautiful and moving. There's also a sequence where one of the Russian cosmonauts who has a radio is talking to people on the surface of the Earth, but they're only able to communicate for a few minutes at a time while the space station is in range, and he briefly touches into the life of a woman who has lost her husband. And I just found this very, very moving and beautiful. Not every section of Orbital was as arresting to me personally as the parts I've just described, but the work as a whole functions almost like a piece of music. It's like a symphony with movements. I guess it would be a kind of program music, like Mussorgsky type piece, with very thematic and telling a story, but not necessarily through a linear narrative. So I guess that's more or less my thoughts on the book for now. If you've read it, please let me know what you thought about it. If you haven't read it, I would recommend it, especially if the things I've said about it seem interesting to you. It's a brief book, but poetic, beautiful, and very, very rich. If you'd like to talk to me about it, as ever, please jump in the comments. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate it. Do not feel obliged. Take care of yourself, and see you around.